We talked recently about the toll of injuries and how this extends well beyond just the physical and the physiological aspects of injury. The psychological and emotional piece is a major component to this, and I know this is something that gets talked about ad nauseum, but it's for good reason. And when we talk about the athletic community, especially, what we really see fractured is the routineness and the rhythm and the identity that are tied to their day to day. So, thinking about it in this context, when you're an athlete, even at the high school level, but high school, collegiate, professional level athletes are extremely automated. There's a lot of predictability in the scheduling. There's a very strong familiarity to their day to day. They're always around the same people. They know who to go to for the things that they need. They understand what's coming next in their schedule, and so we kind of become conditioned to this. And when you get pulled from that rhythm or that routine, it can kind of create this paranoia of sorts where, now all of a sudden you have to think about what you're doing. You have to, you don't have anticipation or predictability of what's coming next. And psychologically, this can become burdensome. We even translate that over to general population, and not being able to just know what's coming next and having to think about some of these mundane things. That's something that seems quite mundane at the surface, but really can kind of strip away at somebody. On the second half of this is probably the more you know significant side of this conversation is the identity piece that gets fragmented with injury. And this is something that we've seen extensively with the high level military communities. Probably the most palpable in that group, but also too with the athletic population. And when you are so elite at what you do and you've done it for such a long time, it becomes the bedrock of who you are. And it's how you are perceived by others, but also how they are perceiving themselves. And when you strip those physical abilities away, now all of a sudden they don't really have that same keen sense of awareness of who they actually are, or in some sense what they're able to provide. So now it starts to eviscerate the perception of self value and feeling as if they are doing things that are meaningful, because when they play, they get the applause and they get the good job from the coach or their parent. And now it kind of creates this intrinsic reward system. When you first suffer an injury, or when you're suffering from chronic pain complexes or repetitive injuries, the first priority in my mind is to establish your routine and try to maintain or recapture your rhythm. Now, objectively, this routine and this rhythm is going to be different, but to the best of your ability, you need to keep something in place that is close or as close to your standard schedule as you would have. And you need to put the meaningfulness back into the day to day. The best example that I've ever seen of this, be demonstrated is in the documentary Muse with Kobe Bryant. And this details his Achilles tendon injury back in 2015. And he talks about this almost poetically, but in great depth, about how, that first step, no pun intended, is putting the schedule back in place. And so he had we all know Kobe's work ethic and whatnot, but he had a very detailed plan of how he was going to populate his day, because he didn't want there to be any psychological drag as he was going through this physical rehabilitation process. And I think it's a really good illustration of that. The second thing is recapturing the identity. Now, this is a really deep conversation. This is something that goes well beyond a 5 minute, little YouTube video that we're talking about here. But, effectively, you have to reinforce that having your physical skills compromised does not compromise who you are as a person, or as a human, or as a teammate, or as an athlete. It's a part of the process. It's a part of the journey that you're on. And if you are a high level athlete, or if you're, in a high level operator, you are going to get fucked up. You're going to have things happen. You're going to experience injuries. and it's just a part of the process that you are incurring. So when we have these things happen, I think that having a firm 24-hour rule on the injury is an imperative thing. Take 24 hours in that first week or so, major injury or something that's not super severe, and give yourself 24 hours to channel it, process it, work through it emotionally, and then understand after that 24-hour period, okay, now we're back in gear. And yeah, while you may not be going to practice, you may be going to a PT clinic, and you may be watching film just as a process of continuing to learn and study the game, but you may not be breaking your film down. You want to try to keep the identity piece intact through maintaining as much normalcy as you're able to. Then just understand that this is a byproduct of time. Enough time goes by, these things will start to come back into the fold. You will start to recalibrate, recapture that identity. And then in a moment's notice, you'll look back and say, okay, we had a bad hamstring strain, or we had an ACL injury. That sucked. I hated that process. I hated being in that. But here we are now, and now we're kind of back in motion.